Okay, let's keep going. Chapter 28, The Treasure Hunt. Moth Fletchwood, Marzana said, bringing the name up with some difficulty. You came to our house. Moth's short for Timothy, huh? She turned her head just a fraction toward Kit. And Kit's short for Christopher? And you're the captain's kid, Timmy Moth replied. Then he spun her back around and put the knife in place again. Keep at it, he shouted at Amelia, who'd paused, or really hadn't yet begun, picking the bear trap. Amelia sighed and went to work. Or she'd gotten it, or pretending to, considering how fast she'd gotten it open before because the lock didn't leap open at her touch. She was buying time. Marzana thought fast, trying to outpace the fear that kept rising and rising. It was hard to reconcile the young man who'd come looking for her mom with the kind of person who'd harm a kid. But then again, these two nice young men had come to Hedgelock. They'd already kidnapped or hired someone to kidnap, but what was the difference, really? Another innocent girl. There was no telling what they'd do. Moth and Kit couldn't fight off all five of them, but stupid, with Marzana a captive, they wouldn't have to. Not if Moth was really willing to hurt her. Probably right about now he was realizing that he had to be willing. She felt her knees begin to weaken and shake. Don't panic. Focus. Yes, he had to be willing, but on the other hand, he couldn't do it too early, or the others would have no reason not to rush him. If they all charged him at once, he might get a couple swipes in with that knife, but they'd be able to overcome him. Marzana eyed the increasingly sick-looking Kit and thought little brother wasn't going to bring much to the fight. Still, her friends could get hurt, and by that time, of course, she'd be guaranteed to be in pretty bad shape herself. Or worse. Her knees began to knock again. Focus. Claw down the panic and focus. Nothing was going to happen before Amelia got the lock open. There was time. Time for something, maybe. But what? What could she do, pinned like this? She could speak, that was about all. She could speak. The panic that rose then was almost unbearable. It can't all hang on me talking our way out of this, she thought wildly. It can't. I can't. She had a sudden vision of herself asking Nyala the all-important question tomorrow. Did I do okay? Well, Mars, the imaginary Nyala replied, you got yourself and everyone else killed. Wish I had better news for you. I can't do this, she thought desperately. But what else was there time for? What else could she do? Her brain started its customary racing through possibilities, opening gambits, likely replies, worst-case scenarios. Stop thinking about worst-case scenarios. Alternate bad outcomes, because those were the simulations she was accustomed to running, even if it seemed like reality never did quite play out according to any of them. There isn't time for this, she told herself. I don't know how not to do this. Her brain screamed back at her. Seconds ticked by. She couldn't choke up, worrying about what to say. Not now. If we get out of this alive, that means I did okay, she told herself. That's the metric. For once, that much at least. Knowing afterward whether I put my foot in it will be easy. That's right, imaginary Nyala put in. That's exactly right. Focus on that. You can do this, so go do it. The fear didn't precisely melt away, but it backed off, and Marzana found she could think again. What was in the locker? What was the point of all this, after all? Back when the Fletchwood brothers had come to her house, Marzana's mother had said their father had passed through Nagspeak 15 years before. Christopher had asked if Tumbler might have left something behind in Nagspeak after that visit, and Moth, who had otherwise been eager to hear her mother talk about absolutely anything she was willing to divulge, had been furious. Too late for that, he had said, probably because by then the job they'd hired Tasha Cormorant to undertake was already underway. Marzana took as deep a breath as she could, considering the knife. It's something from your father, isn't it? She said shakily. That thing in the locker? Shut up, Moth snapped. He left you something when he died? Marzana persisted, putting the tiniest bit of emphasis on the word died, and hoping the rest of the knot was paying attention and not just freaking out about the knife at her throat. Something that what? Told you to come look here? Shut up! But you didn't mention it to my mother, Marzana persisted. Why not? She could have helped. I asked, Kit spoke up. I tried. Remember, I asked if he left anything behind in Nagspeak when he came back. Your mother didn't know. Moth snorted. She said she didn't know, but she made it pretty clear when she didn't reply to my letters that she didn't care. She sent them back unopened. The captain washed her hands of the crew the second that ship blew. She did not, Marzana retorted. They were her family. Well, she washed her hands of us, Moth snarled. I tried, after Dad died. Yes, he left us a letter. It said he'd always meant to bring us back here. He said he'd left something special for us to find here. Apologized for never making the trip with us. But that was all. Our inheritance was that and a poem, of all things. A poem! After that, I wrote letters to his precious captain for a year, but without a single word in reply. So we came out to see for ourselves, and what do you know, but the land over this station had been sold, and that darn house built, and everything below it sealed up. So that's why he never came back with you and Kit, Marzana said, trying to make her voice sound soothing and reasonable. He must have learned about the station being sealed up, and he didn't know about the back way in here. And Violet Cross and her crew never messed with civilians, so he wouldn't have broken in through the house above. It doesn't matter now, Moth shrieked. We'd already put this in motion when I came to your house. I just wanted to see the famous captain once, to see this person my father loved so deeply, but who couldn't be bothered to write so much as a write back to his children. It was for everyone's safety, Marzana insisted, remembering what Mrs. Sacklebarand had said after Moth had left the house earlier that week. They all agreed. Do you know what it cost my mother? Cost everyone? That crew loved each other. That's not good enough, because those of us who loved them needed more. Moth's hand holding the knife was shaking a little now. Marzana tried not to think of what might happen if she made him too angry. And here we are. That's what's taking so long, he snarled at Amelia. Amelia pointed at the lock with a pick. You think this is so easy? You do it. Moth swore, but he didn't offer to try again himself. Your dad wouldn't want this, Marzana persisted. What could possibly be in there that's worth this, right here? Marzana, Brandon said in a warning tone, please be careful. It's our inheritance, Moth spat, and he left it here for us. He called it our treasure hunt, the treasure hunt he'd wanted to take us on but couldn't. So I'm pretty sure he did want this. You didn't know him. Keep your opinions to yourself. Timmy, Kit said miserably, still grasping Amelia's collar, please don't. Would he have wanted you to kidnap someone to get it? Marzana asked reluctantly. We didn't do that, Moth argued. She did. The carrier. I hired her to empty out the house. I didn't tell her how to do it, and she didn't tell me the details. At this, Marzana nearly laughed. Deniability. Boy, do I know about that. Not another word, Moth said in a low, deadly tone. Marzana nodded, and for a moment there was nothing but terrified breathing and the scritch-scratch of Amelia's fake lockpicking. What had her mother said about Tumbler Fletchwood? That he had been a gentle soul who loved poetry and puzzles? He taught me everything I know about locks, Mrs. Sacklebarand had said. He could open anything, absolutely anything. If Tumbler had known as much about locks as her mother said, why had he put the treasure at the end of the hunt behind one that was so easy to pop? There wasn't a single one here that would take any skill to open, Amelia had said. And who would have used them, since the station had never been opened? Where had they all come from? Tumbler had been responsible for at least one of them, the one securing locker 152. Could he have been responsible for the others too? That was perhaps the simplest answer. And if he had been, then the so-called treasure hunt couldn't be what Moth thought it was. If it was the kind of treasure that had to be secured and protected from anyone else finding it, surely an expert in locks would have made different choices. Whatever's in there, she said softly, praying that she was choosing the right words. It's not what you think it is. Please let me be right. Moth's arm stiffened even more, but he said nothing. When he left this for you, the station hadn't been sealed up yet. He thought all you'd have to do was find the entrance and figure out a way to get in. Marzana gestured at the banks of lockers with her chin. The blade rasped against her skin. He went to the trouble of putting dozens of locks down here, so the one meant for you wouldn't stand out. He thought it was possible other people might find it, so he gave it some super basic camouflage. But he also used a padlock anyone with the skills could open. And you know what that tells me? Enlighten me, Moth said through clenched teeth. Marzana licked her lips. Whatever's in there, it's not money or jewels or anything like that. It's not going to be a trove worth breaking laws for. Your father knew there was a chance someone else would find it, and he wasn't that worried about it, because he knew it was something only his own family would care about. She ignored the hand around her wrists that was clenching and unclenching with fury. As long as he kept the knife hand steady, that was all that mattered. Your father wasn't a pirate, and he wasn't on a crew that smuggled just to make themselves rich. Whatever's in there, it's not an inheritance. It's a different kind of gift. I bet it's something like the book of poems he brought back from Nagspeak Speak for your mother, she added, remembering another detail from their visit to Hedgelock Court. Kit spoke up. You said he used a lock that anyone? Yeah, Amelia, Marzana called. You can quit stalling. They need to see it. Amelia sighed and gave the lock a yank. It fell open in her hand. She unthreaded it from the latch and stepped aside. Be my guest. Moth turned with Marzana still clutching tight and watched Kit as he let go of Amelia's collar and reached for the latch. Timmy? Kit said hesitantly. Moth Fletchwood gave a little twitch toward the locker, then seemed to remember he had to keep his eyes on Brandon and JJ and whatever or whoever was responsible for the mysteriously floating backpack. Marzana could feel his hesitation. I didn't know Tumbler Fletchwood, Marzana said quietly, turning her head just a fraction to try to look Moth in the eye. But I know who his shipmates were, and I do have a pretty good idea what kind of person he was. And I know what it is to need more, she said with difficulty, wishing she could turn farther to really include Kit in the statement. More stories, more information, to know where you came from. I think even if it's not the kind of inheritance you were expecting, whatever's in there will be something you want. You see if I'm right. That's all I ever wanted, Kit said quietly, to know more about who Pop really was. Not this, Timmy, he said bitterly to his brother, not kidnapping. That was her, not us, Moth said, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. Marzana felt the knife move just slightly away from her neck as he turned to Kit and the locker. Open it, he said to his brother. Kit pulled up on the latch and swung the door open. He stared inside for a moment. There's nothing here. There's nothing here.